The sea below Dragonstone kept its own counsel. It spoke in gray tongues, hissing against the black flanks of the island, gnawing at the old steps cut into the basalt, lifting white threads where current and cliff argued in a voice as old as storms. Salt mist and the smell of kelp rode the air, thinner and sharper at dawn. Gulls wheeled and cried and were answered by a deeper sound, a sound that was not wind, not water, the slow churn of vast lungs above the clouds. Daenerys stood on the ramparts with her hands on the cold crenellations as if the stone might warm under her claim. The tower's parapet cut a neat edge through the murk of morning. The drop beyond it fell sheer as a blade. She had come without attendants, without the practiced arrangement of hair and jewels. The winds had claimed it, and a few pale strands had slipped free, making halos and ropes as the gusts decided. Her breathing matched the sea for a time. Then the shadow of a wing scud over the yard, making the banners flare. She knew the sound of every beat, the weight of each passage through air. She did not look up. The muscles in her forearms were tight beneath the skin. A gust lifted the hem of her cloak and then smoothed it again along her calves. She felt the island hum through the soles of her boots. Fire slept here in lava that had long since cooled, in halls cut to look like ribs and jaws. She had dreamed of that fire as a small heat she could cup. She had brought it into the world when the world had tried to take everything from her. That she could stand and hear the thunder of her children across the morning was the proof that any story could be remade by a will that did not relent. Missandei's footsteps were quiet. They always were, as if she'd learned a way to carry her own weight without burdening the floor. The young woman's face was chapped by wind but still fine at the edges, composed without effort. She dipped her head. "It is colder on the walls than in the yard, Yor." She broke off the honorific and smiled slightly, unoffended by the correction Daenerys had made the day they landed. Names had their power, titles another. Both were tools. "Will you take the hall for breakfast?" In a moment, Daenerys's breath smoked. She let it. They slept on the ridge again. Yes. Missandei's eyes lifted to where the light thinned into cloud. They returned to the cliff where the lamps are hardest to keep lit. They, like the resistance. She said it shyly, as if presuming to read the minds of creatures hatched in fire. "They like height," Daenerys said, "and the wind, and the taste of the sea when it blows hard enough." She did not add, "They like to be above everything," because there were parts of herself she shared only with them. "Has Jon Snow been shown the caverns?" "Not yet." The dragonglass workers wait for his word to begin cutting in earnest. Lord Davos said he would fetch him after the morning's council. The name slid into the air like a pebble into water, a small sound with ripples that went further than one might expect. There had been men and more than men who had made their way to her. Kings in exile, supplicants with the weight of starved cities in their eyes, slavers who had laughed because they could not imagine anything about to change, men who swore and men who hedged their oaths so they might breathe longer. Jon Snow had taken up space more quietly. He stood straight by habit and said little until he meant to say what he meant, and even then it came roughened. His words were not like the lords of Essos who had learned to build bridges of music and silk between their meanings and their mouths. He brought his meanings like wood from a forest, solid, ungraceful, necessary. Daenerys felt the line of her own mouth soften. It was not the man that made the muscles near her jaw ease, not solely. It was the problem he brought. Problems made the blood move faster. They clarified the air. To bring such a problem at such a time, that was the heartbeat of this island, the place where old bones lay under stone and newer bones were flying overhead. "Tell them I will come down," she said to Missandei. "We will see the caverns today. The markings." Missandei's chin lifted, quick with interest. "Yes." Left alone again, Daenerys took another breath and felt the damp make its home in the lining of her lungs. The dragons were playing a game in the cloud. She could sense it the way one senses an argument in a room one cannot see. A drag of air, a sudden stillness as three immense bodies hum, treading, considering. Then the hum returned like a thought remembered. She turned her head and closed her eyes and saw, as she always saw, scaled faces that were not faces but masks. armor over fire and hunger and a knowledge that did not form words. She had thought sometimes that her blood was a river that ran through time and out again, and the dragons were the fishes that leapt in it, not because she coaxed them, but because something green and irresistible was running that way. To think otherwise was vanity. She let vanity come and go like the wind. The yard below was waking in its human way. Squires led horses with their ears laid flat against the salt noise. The Dothraki paced like wolves that had learned to live indoors but never forgot the line of the trees. A kettle steamed its white breath near the smithy. The Unsullied moved in formations that were not formations, an instinct for order showing in how they made space for one another without glance or call. Tyrion had the look of a man who had decided how to phrase something disagreeable, and therefore was in a mood to be persuaded otherwise. Varys drifted close to warmth where he could find it and did not admit to being cold. Ser Jorah moved with a slow courtesy that made room for every other body in his way. He carried his hurt, past and present, the way he carried his sword, without the need to brandish it to prove that it was real. When Daenerys descended by the inner stair to the yard, the chatter fell into a line of proper silences, not fearful but mindful. Jon Snow stood near the lintel of the great door. Davos was with him, a little apart, as if he had meant to say something and then chosen to wait. Jon did not see her first. He was looking up, not at the sky but at the carved dragons wrought into the stonework that framed the arch. He had the expression of a man trying to reconcile two truths, that a thing existed and that he had to understand what it would ask of him. He turned when she approached and set his hands at his back, a soldier's habit, so as not to seem threatening, which of course threatened nothing and everything at once. "Your men will begin to cut," Daenerys said without preamble. "I will show you where the stone is thickest." He inclined his head. "Thank you." He had a way of being grateful that did not make a debt feel like a noose. He had the heaviness of winter about his shoulders, not the bleakness she had known in the red wastes, but a kind of solidity the cold puts into the bones of people who have learned to keep going rather than look for fire. He smelled of wet wool and leather that had taken more rain than was good for it, and the iron tang of the forge where men were making new shapes out of old ore. When he looked at her, he looked, not glanced. Pupils dark, eyes level, something considering and not yet decided behind them. A shadow crossed them. Another. Daenerys felt the shift in the air before she heard the thud. A whole yard can move when men think a dragon's landing means flame, and yet all the movement had a tide to it. People stepped aside and forward in the same breath, uncertain which would be braver. The dragons came down in a ribbed choir of wing and bone. Stone rang with the landing like a drumskin struck. Rhaegal hit first, tail whipping to counterbalance, the air flicking in high-pressure bursts under his broad green wings. Viserion came low and slid to a halt so that the wind he pulled with him blew grit in a sheet up against the boots of the nearest ranks. Drogon did not come all the way down. He hung, back-winging, huge enough to make the torches along the wall's gutter. Daenerys lifted her chin without thinking. It was instinct to stand, to be something their deep eyes found so that hunger would not be the only language spoken in the yard. She felt the particular ache in her throat that came when she spoke to them in the tongue that had been braided into her by a life that had taken her through too many rooms and too many cities to be sure which of them had been home. "Nejat," she said, soft but carrying. "Come." The green head swung. It was not strange that Rhaegal would look at her first. It was strange that the look did not hold. The pupils were split black coins in rivers of amber. They were always beautiful, always ugly. He turned past her, as if the face he had meant to find were one step to the side. Daenerys did not register all of the small things that the yard recorded. Grey Worm's hand loosening on his spear to prepare for the only softness his training permitted, the one that would let him move faster with less noise. Tyrion's exhale. Ser Jorah's torque from ankle to shoulder as he changed the angle of his body to stand between one danger and another without ever seeming to move at all. She only heard a small animal sound emerge from a throat she did not know was hers as Rhaegal's neck softened and curved and a head that could punch through a stone curtain wall came level. Then lower still, until the great horned brow was almost in line with a man's chest. Jon Snow did not step back. He did not step forward. He stood. Davos made an involuntary movement, one hand half-raised as if to catch a child at the edge of a well. Jon's mouth opened a little. He lifted one palm. Daenerys had seen strangers approach her dragons with their hands because there was, in people, the memory of touching animals that had loved them and could be calmed by the palm's reassurance. The gesture always made her stomach tighten, because it assumed a familiarity she knew could not be granted by anything but a chain of days and nights and hours and words. And yet what happened then was not the old foolishness in new clothes. Jon did not reach for those broad scales with a cheap faith in gentleness conquering hunger. He moved as if he had recognized a road he had traveled in a dream. The kind of dream that is not dream exactly but a letter delivered by a blood that knows more than it tells. His hand went to the ridge between the big plates, the place near the frill, where the scales overlap in such a way that the skin beneath is most tender. Regal breathed. The breath changed the air they all stood in. It was a taste, a damp warmth that rang of peat and iron and old lightning. Jon's fingers pressed, a little not to exert a man's will on a beast, but to meet that pulse with a human one. A spar of sound lifted from Regal's chest, something between a purr and the groan of a millstone beginning to turn. Daenerys took a step. It was not far, felt like a river crossing. "Regal," she said, and then again sharper, in the old tongue that had named kings and hearths and storms. Her voice caught. The dragon did not turn away from Jon. Drogon came down with a scream that made the yard flatten against itself, knees bending in an instinct remembered from before men made towns. Drogon's eyes were the color of a forge after full day. The membranes around them contracted and opened like the iris of a camera lens, letting in light and closing against too much of it. He hung over the pair on the ground, and everything in Daenerys, everything that was grief and love and the length of a desert with no shade, went cold. "Rebas," she said, command and caution together. "Master yourself." Drogon's head swung toward her. In that instant there was the recognition she had lived on in places where recognition. Ion was the only bread. This is mine and I am its, and that is enough. In the next instant his gaze passed over her shoulder and fell like a weight upon the man who had not flinched. Daenerys saw. She would remember it as the first hinge on which all the care she had taken swung wide open. The way Drogon's pupils flared and narrowed, flared again, like a breath taken in surprise. He lowered. His shadow crossed her face, and there was a taste in the air that she had never found words for. Something like iron filings and fennel and the skin of fruit just before it bleeds. "Stay," Davos said softly to no one. Jon's palm was on Regal's frill, and then, slowly, inexorably, it was not. It lifted and turned in a movement that was not command and not acquiescence. Something like acknowledgement passed between equal strangers. He put the same palm to Drogon's snout, at the place where the black scales ran smoother, lubricated by flight and the friction of their movement through cloud. Drogon exhaled. The hot air reached Daenerys' face and made her eyes water. She did not step back from the heat. She had learned to stand inside fire without fleeing. She had never yet had to learn to be ignored by it. Viserion drew up beside them, craning his pale neck. His eyes had always been a little madder than his brother's, not because madness had found him, but because his humor ran at a different pitch. He loved to drop stones into pools, loved to worry ropes until they tore, loved the way doors broke when he ran his shoulder against them. He had bumped her more than once to test whether she would be moved, the way a child once had tugged at her sleeve, wanting the world to fracture into joy for both of them. He came small in this moment. He came as if what he was following could teach him where to find shelter. He inhaled near Jon Snow's ribs, so close that the cloth at the man's waist fluttered, and then he huffed a small plume that smelled like the memory of burning leaves. The yard had forgotten to breathe. Daenerys could feel the nothing in the air where dozens of lungs held their breath, because the body knows when a loud sound would be an insult. She heard her own voice and did not know who she sounded like. "Drogon," she said again. He blinked his heavy lids. He did not come away. The neck cords in his throat dimmed and swelled with the rhythm of something she could not marry to her own. She said the word for her in the tongue that fit their mouths. He did not answer because dragons did not answer with words. The thought came into her mind, precise as a cut. not a turning away, a turning toward. Do not be childish. The dragons have a hunger you did not put in them. You only lit it. They choose fire, but it was not only fire that moved them. She saw it now, the way a person can see the shift in a tide if they look long enough at a place where the water meets the shore. The dragons had noticed something stamped into the man standing with them, something that rang in the closed chamber of their bodies. It was not his scent of iron and storm. There was a note she had not heard before, and now that she did, she could not unhear it. She felt turned inside out by the sight of her eldest's heavy head pressed again, gently, into the pressure of Jon's palm. The Unsullied did not move. The Dothraki made the small sounds of men who felt the floor give under them but promised the men beside them that they would not fall through it. Tyrion had one hand at his mouth as if he could catch a word he had thought and keep it from escaping. Varys had a new and exact taste in his face that would, later, become a speech about the stubbornness of blood and the unkind jokes of the gods. Ser Jorah had taken 2 steps and stopped for the same reason a man might halt at the edge of an altar stone where a prayer goes farther if said from a distance. Jon had not moved, although he might have, because every other man in the yard would have moved and been forgiven for it. He had the look of someone seeing a snowstorm and suddenly that snowstorm looking back. "Your Grace," Davos said, and in that phrase there was warning and apology and the shaky smile of a man who had once known how to keep ships upright in bad seas, and was being reminded that his tricks were poor when a mountain fell into the water. Daenerys stepped again. She would not push through the space between them, not because fear kept her from it, but because she would not trample her way into a thing that was happening. She came along the right flank, her right foot biting a little into the layer of ash ground into the yard's dirt, her left foot following. Drogon's nostrils flared and one giant slit urged a strand of hair back from her face. His gaze brushed her. Then it went back. "He is not taking them," she told the frantic thing that beat its wings inside her. "They are not taken. They are found." She stood alongside Jon Snow. Up close he smelled of cold and linen and a horse's leather that had seen better oil. His eyes did not leave Drogon's. His throat moved when he swallowed, and the tendons there were instruments. He said nothing. She heard herself speak because someone had to. "They have never done this," she said. "Not like this." He breathed. "I don't know what I did." "You stood," she said, and could not keep the thread of accusation out of it, as if he had performed a theft by inaction. "I would have run when I was a boy," he said, almost smiling. "Not now." Drogon's head came lower. For an instant, the jut of horn and plate eclipsed the world to left and right. Jon put his hand not at the tender place any longer, but forward and up, between the eyes where a strike could become a caress or a line could be drawn in blood. Drogon exhaled again, and this time there was a note in the rumble that Daenerys had only heard the night she had climbed out of a pyre alive and found 3 small creatures mewling around her. Something like yes said by a thing M. Ade when the world was younger than words. Her heart turned over as if the ribs around it had become loose and needed adjusting by a hand large enough to hold mountains. She felt Missandei at her shoulder. Not the touch, but the temperature, the way a friend's presence changes the cold. Missandei did not speak. She did not need to. The look on her face would be the look a priestess might wear seeing a sanctum rearrange itself around a new center. The moment did not end so much as find its next form. Regal shifted so that his foreleg bent. The angle put the heavy shoulder near the ground and let the line of the back notch against the air just so. Daenerys knew the posture. It was the one that made mounting possible when the rider was not a bird. "No," she said. It was quiet and uncommanding. It came from a place below orders, below dignity. "No." Jon looked at her then. It was the first time since the shadows had crossed them. She understood the look. It was apology and refusal both. It was also fear and not for himself. He did not want to wrong her. He would not refuse the thing that had lowered itself to him without insult. To insult a dragon was to insult a storm. To accept was to become the thing all the rumors sharpened themselves against. "Don't," she said, and did not know whether she spoke to him or to the animal or to the morning itself, which had turned into a different day under the same sun. Jon kept his palm on the hot hide. He moved with the care of a man crossing a slope under loose stones. He set one boot upon the curve of the foreleg where the scales were built like overlapping shields. Regal adjusted so that the sinew there firmed. Jon's knee bent. His weight rose. He did not look at her again. He found his place, awkward as anyone's first climb onto the back of a creature with no saddle and a will of its own. He gripped the ridge and the ridge let him. "Ser Yora," Tyrion breathed, barely making words with it. "I see," Yora said, and folded himself into a witness. Drogon backwinged once, twice, and the downdraft pulled ash and small stones into brief storms. Viserion made a sound that was almost mockery and almost joy. Regal gathered himself, and then the whole yard disappeared below the great green belly, like the word for ground spoken and then swallowed. The lift was clean. Jon's body leaned, not in mastery, but because a man leans when the earth leaves him and his bones ask, "Where is the line I have kept all my life?" Daenerys did not move. It was not paralysis. It was not shock. It was the stillness of a pendulum at the top of its swing, the place where choice is gathered like breath. Drogon hung where he was for half a heartbeat longer than any of them expected. He looked at her. He looked at Jon. He soared, black on black, like a shadow lifting up from the body that cast it. An exhale ran through the men as if someone had opened a window in a crowded hall. It did not have relief in it. It had the numbness that walks at the edges of a battlefield before anyone knows which way the blood will tilt. She closed her eyes against the brightness of the sky or the brightness of the heat inside her ribs. She opened them when Missandei's fingers, very light, came and went from her sleeve. "Would you like to?" "No." They were above the clouds now. The sun accepted them. Regal's neck stretched, and the music of his flight made the air shiver. Jon lay along the line of the spine, his mouth open, the old scar that tracked along his ribs warmed by a world he had never thought to feel in this way. He had always thought heights belonged to birds and gods and winter's wind. He had always walked. He did not think in words that men would find pleasant or beautiful. He simply fitted himself to a thing harder and more alive than stone and put the work of balance into his hips and thighs and hands. He was not graceful. Regal did not mind. The dragon knew the difference between a clinging parasite and a passenger. He knew, too, the tension that runs down a vertebra when fear is a more honest language than command. Jon's hair whipped behind him and then plastered to his neck when they banked and the wind changed its mind. Between the plates under his palms, he felt heat as one feels heat against a kettle when it has been set by the coals too long. He smelt the sharp clean of the high air where a man has to work for breath. Far below, he saw his first measure of the island as a shape and not a road. Dragonstone had been a series of cold rooms, a table carved with an old hunger, a set of stairs that had to be counted to become known. Now it was a tooth rising out of skin, and the skin was the sea. The mainland was a rumor at the horizon. He thought of snow that fell sideways and of wolves that loved him because he had been too young to know what not to love. He thought of dead men who walked, the memory of them like the taste a mouth retains after biting a coin. He thought of the woman looking up into the morning he flew into with her animals, and he did not try to untie the knot this made inside his chest. He let it be a knot. Regal climbed until the air was a dry blade and then slid, playing with gravity the way a child runs along a wall and then jumps down to see how strong his ankles are. Jon's fingers screamed at him that they were human. He did not let go. He tested the little language that a rider's body speaks. Lean to tell, hips to say not that way, the weight of a shoulder to ask. Regal listened, not because the man knew how to speak, but because he recognized the tune. The tune was blood, not the open spill of it. The secret note it made locked inside the cage of a rib. The first time Regal turned his head just enough that Jon could see the slitted gold of his eye, the man laughed. Surprised him. It surprised the thing in him he had kept under old skins. The part that had made a cave in the shape of a woman in a mountain feel like home once. The part that had made the teeth of the wind feel like proof of life. Drogon came alongside and went ahead in a lope through air that was no one's invention but old. Viserion flanked, teasing, letting his wingtip brush the greens just enough to change his angle and make a game of correction. They moved like pieces of an old story that had read itself aloud too many times in empty rooms and was finally performing again in a hall with a roof to catch the sound. Jon put a hand to the plates and felt the low vibration that came before flame, not to warn, but to note. It meant pleasure. He had learned 100 little signs from wolves and one big sign from horses. He learned his first dragon sign and felt his mouth go dry. When they came down at last, they came fast, the way a man comes down the last stairs when someone he loves is in pain. The yard ran to meet them with its eyes. The feet of it did not move an inch. Jon's landing was a clatter and a corrugation of scales and a side slide that tore a groove in the earth. He stayed where he was longer than he would have had he wished to show anyone he knew what he was doing. He was not interested in showing anything except that he would not tumble under the foreleg and be crushed like a beetle. Regal's shoulder rolled, made him lurch. He found his balance by finding the line of the dragon's spine with his thigh and letting muscle do the work. He slid down. His boots hit dirt. He staggered 1/4 step, stopped the second, made a small bow of apology to himself and stood. The yard made its noise all at once. Davos breathed something that was half prayer, half swearing. A Dothraki man pounded his chest twice and grinned like a butcher seeing a good cut. Tyrion rubbed his eyes as if they could be persuaded, by friction, to believe what they had recorded. Varys smiled thinly and then wiped it away because he had not meant to show it. Yora's choice not to be jealous made him older, in a kind way that looked nearly young. Grey Worm saw the way the soldiers watched and calculated how to make the watching not challenge the woman he served. Daenerys came forward. The first thing the dragons did was step toward Jon Snow again. The second was as if they remembered they had ever known her. Drogon's head dipped. Not to her. Between them, for a beat, there was no royal personage, no deck of titles. There was a woman who had once been a girl, who had once been a nobody with a name stolen and a body bargained and a fire lit, and 3 creatures who had come because of a thing she had done. There was a man who wore winter like a plain cloak and had a history behind him whose strings were tangled inside other people's histories. "They think you are theirs," she said, and tried to smile at the absurdity of it. Humor can sometimes make a mistake cut cleaner, like a sharper knife. "I think they think I am something," Jon said. It was blunt. It was faithful to the facts. "I don't know what to call it." She lifted a hand. Regal watched the hand as he would watch a mouse at the edge of his vision. She lowered it. A small shiver made its way from elbow to wrist. She did not permit it to reach her fingers. "Will you come to the caverns?" she said. "Before men start to cut the stone in stupid places and I have to make time to scold them." He understood 2 things in her tone and took neither for granted. He nodded. "Aye." Then, remembering, "Yes." They walked with Davos behind them and Missandei at 2 paces, and more people than necessary finding reasons to travel the same way. The corridor down to the caverns was one of the old ones, the kind built when the men who had first come here thought walls were the right shape for fear to take if it wanted to sit and listen. The torches were set in dragon-headed sconces, mouths holding iron as if they had decided to bite and been caught at it. The air changed as they descended. It grew still, not thick, simply less interested in moving. The heat coming from the depths was not the heat of flame but the breath of stone remembering that it used to flow. The first chamber opened like a throat, and the light of the torches found glitter inside it the way sun finds fish in a river. Dragon glass hummed in the walls. It was not a literal sound, not one the ear's little bones could catch. It was the kind of music that makes a spine straighten, because standing up is what the body does when something that matters is nearby. On the walls were marks, old white scraped into old black. Some were careless scratches. Some were more. Jon stood before a shape that looked like a man with a stick. Then he saw the man had no eyes in the drawing. The stick was a sword that had the kind of heft even in crude outline that made it more than a stick. He went to the next. Men in crowns. The shape of a long spine with wings drawn in strokes that understood what a wing does when it commits itself to air. A wheel of circles whose meaning might have been obvious to the hand that made them and was lost to every hand since. A map everywhere and nowhere. They say this was here when this was built. Missandei said, a little breathless, as one is when history opens a drawer for you. Or before. My brother would have called it proof he had always been right, Daenerys said, because that was how her mouth protected her from how her heart was reacting. She lifted the torch in her hand. Light redrew the maps, gave them the animation flicker grants everything when it comes off a fire. I like that it could be nothing. Men make stories from scratches on walls. You could draw horse lines and goats and call them parts of a prophecy. Jon moved up beside a mark that was not a man, not a dragon, not a tree. It had 3 spokes, at their ends hooked shapes. He did not know why it looked back at him. If the dead come, he said, they will come as a tide, not as a map. The maps will burn or drown or end up in the bellies of fish. It's what we do after they come that makes a mark a way to walk or just scratches. Daenerys considered him without turning fully. After they come does not happen unless we can keep them from coming full. Then we cut. He put his palm to the wall, not to touch the drawing, but to feel the stone as one feels the neck of a horse to see if fever has entered it. I'll put men who listen to instructions in charge. I don't want to ruin my island, she said, with a half smile that held no forgiveness and no need for it. Say it, my island. He said nothing. The torchlight caught his scar. For a passing heartbeat, she wanted to ask him who had laid that line along his skin, as if the answer would explain why dragons had put their heavy vows elsewhere this morning. She did not ask because answers, too, could be chains. Your Grace, Davos murmured from the mouth of the chamber, in a tone that meant someone had come to find them and did not wish to step into the breath of the place without permission. Tyrion entered with that small tip of the head that is a nobleman's apology for not being born into a world where he should have served someone properly. Forgive, there have been developments on the hill. Ravens do not bring small news today. He looked surprisingly, for him, uncertain where to put his eyes. Also, your children are sitting outside the north door of Lord Snow's quarters and will not be moved by any argument a man can make without endangering the roof. Daenerys closed her eyes, opened them. Jon made a noise that wanted to be a laugh and could not find its way out of his chest as anything but air. They guard the people they sleep beside, she said flat. I taught them that. I taught them the smell of beds and the way a door opens when a hand that belongs opens it. We might, Tyrion said gently, wish to experiment with unteaching that particular skill. We cannot unteach what we did not teach, Missandei offered. We can only teach something else more strongly. And what would we teach them now? Daenerys asked, and heard the teeth of hurt nicking at the words. That the world is not smaller when it bends, Missandei said, as if she were reciting something she had learned once to keep herself from breaking. They came back into the high air. The hill took their breath with the ease of a debtor used to be paid. The dragons had draped themselves like dark clouds along the length of the wall that sided the northern exposure. One great head rested upon the flagstones so that it blocked the passage to a door where a bearskin had been hung to keep the draft off. Men who had stood before the walls of cities were giving that door a respectful berth. Grey Worm approached, helm off, eyes steady. We can move them, he said. We will not kill them. We will make room. His mouth did not show any of the calculation his eyes had done, which included the shapes of all the broken bodies that might pave the space it would take to accomplish such moving. No, Daenerys said, before Tyrion could make a speech about optics and wills. We will not place the weight of this mourning on the backs of men who love their queen and ask them to carry it. We will go around. We will sleep otherwise. She said the words and tasted their ash. A guest's door is closed until it is not. Your Grace, Yora said softly, in the tone of a man who knows that shame is an animal that only grows when chased. Your chamber is not far. The dragon's eyes tracked her. She had learned to read 100 small signals in them, the twitch of a membrane, the listen of the jaw. Now she read something she had not had to read before, watchfulness that did not include her. She lifted her hands, not to make a command, but simply because the line of her body had to find a shape to keep from breaking. I am not hungry, she said to no one who had spoken. Tyrion, make the council short. I don't want to be talked at today. I want to be told what will be done." He nodded. It was the easiest thing he did all day. Jon stood awkwardly, the way a man stands when a horse he has not asked for follows him down a lane, and he does not want to insult either the beast or the neighbors. "I'll move," he said, "if they think." "If they think you are safe there," she said quickly, like a lash cracked. "You will not move and make them think they must guard every door you open between now and wherever you go next." She caught herself, soothed the coil. "They are creatures of habit. We will give them an opportunity to maintain this one and then to forget it. Grey Worm, have the kitchen set trays outside the door at every meal. Let the dragons bore themselves into hunger there. Then remove the trays. If they knock them over, do not cook more for their entertainment. Make it ordinary. They will move, or they will not. And there is work to be done either way." Work to be done became a shield she could carry without having to name her hurt. She took it up and walked beneath it. The council was a spool to unwind and wind again. Plots and countermoves, the smell of smoke from ships that were not hers and men who would be drowning by sundown in battles in which they would never see her face. She gave orders. She asked questions. Her mind did not wander. It split itself like a river around a rock and went forward on both sides of the obstruction. Sometimes she saw slippered feet under the door, the servants who had never before hesitated between errands. Sometimes she heard a sound that made bile and tears warm the back of her throat. A rumble like laughter and a clatter like claws tapping stone, her children turning in their sleep against a threshold that was not hers. She spoke twice without hearing herself, and Missandei touched her wrist each time, and the skin there learned that it could hold two realities at once without breaking. The reality in the room and the one outside where love was standing in the way of a door. It was near dusk when she let the men scatter. The light came over the sea like something spilled carefully from a cup. She did not go to the north corridor. She went to the parapet again, because she was not yet ready to be refused by eyes that had never refused her. The air had warmed and then cooled as the sun laid its last hand on the water. The black birds that nested in the cracks of the high tower had fed and were silent. She could hear the meal in the hall begin, the low stave of it. She could choose not to hear it. There was a step behind her that her body had not yet learned. Jon Snow's form came into the cut of sky and stone. He did not lean on the Merlin the way men lean when they wish to seem casual. He stood as if the idea of casual were a waste of time. "They're lying there," he said. "I didn't ask them to." "I know," she said. She did not know what else to say, so she did not try for poetry and fail at it. "They did not ask me anything," she swallowed. "They simply did. I've had a wolf that would not go where it was told," he said. "I loved him. He loved me. He had his own mind. The more you tried to remind him of your mind, the less useful it was." She turned her head. It took a measure of courage she had not had to spend in a while to do it. "Are you comparing my dragons to a wolf?" He did not miss that the question could be a lash. He did not flinch from it. "I am comparing the feeling in my chest to the feeling in my chest." He looked out over the sea. "I don't think I've stolen something. I don't think I could steal it from you and live with it. I think something knows something about me that I didn't know, and it knew before I was here." He cleared his throat. "Rough. I don't like it as much as it looks like I like it." The corner of her mouth beat once against a laugh and could not summon it. She nodded. "If you make the mistake of liking it," she said, "you will crash into a mountain, and I will have to explain to the north why their king is paced. Do not like it too much." He smiled briefly, changed his face without making it young. "I won't." They stood, not touching. The cold found new homes in them that would not be evicted. "In my country," he said, "men tell stories about your family, about dragons and about fire. I thought men told them the way they tell that if you leave a newborn exposed on a hillside, it will be picked up by crows and raised to steal bright buttons. Ridiculous. You show them the dragon, and their eyes go big, and then they laugh and tell you another one." He rubbed his thumb against his palm as if checking for splinters. "It's real. I saw it, and it didn't change what I have to do. It changed how small I am when I do it." "You are not small," she said. It was not flattery. You stand as if you know how to fill your own clothes. He made a small noise, skeptical and grateful. You stand like an answer. I stand like someone too proud to bend when bending would make less noise, she said. She caught herself, surprised at the plainness of it. I have learned to light my own torches, she added more softly. Sometimes it means I smell of smoke. They stayed in that place where talking did not have to be clever to be enough. The light turned bruised at the edges, and then the bruise softened. Men passed along the walkway and pinched their mouths to the center to hide expressions that would become gossip if they were unwise. The sea made the same sound it had always made. When she went to her bed, she did not go by the north corridor. She took the old stair that made one dizzy if one looked down too long. Her chamber was simple because she had not yet let the kindness of fussy people clutter it with objects that reminded them who they wanted her to be. The bed was unadorned. There were 2 candles, thick as a child's forearm, and a small bowl for ash. She sat. She lifted her hands and pressed them against her eyes until colors sprung in the dark there. The way a fist of sparks leaps when a log is split and the axe's edge finds a pocket of sap. She breathed. She took her hands away. Missandei came without knocking because there are knocks that shame. She carried a cup. The steam from it smelled like something green and something bitter. She set it down without speaking. She had the face of a woman who has learned how to make her own sorrow kneel and fold its hands and wait while she tended another's. Daenerys did not drink. She looked at the cup as if the surface of it would give her an answer if she could hold her breath long enough. I am not empty, she said. I am not empty. I am not empty. Saying it made a shape for something else to fill. Missandei had a dozen ways to say the thing that might help. She chose none of them. She sat with good posture and was present the way a shoreline is present beneath a sky that cannot remember how not to change. When she did speak, it was to tell a story about a bird she had once seen in Noth that was too heavy for its wings but flew anyway and could only fly by skimming the surface of the sea, so its belly was always wet. And it smelled of salt when it landed and shook itself and laughed at men who tried to catch it by throwing salted bread onto the sand. It meant nothing particular. It meant exactly what it meant. When the candles had burned handsbreadths down into themselves and the cup had cooled and been warmed again and then gone cold again, Daenerys set her palms flat to the bedclothes and let her spine stack bone by bone until she stood. She went to the window. The moon had climbed a ladder only it could see. The dragons were shapes against shapes on the wall in the direction she would not look. She made herself look at them. Drogon's eye opened and caught the moon and gave it back. I will not be broken by this, she said. I will bend so that I do not break. I will find a way to be other than I thought. I will not beg for what I earned. I will not hate what I love. You can do all those things, Missandei said. You have done harder. Daenerys tasted the word harder and did not spit it out. I have, she said, but not this, not yet. Sleep came eventually, like a servant late to appointment, making a little noise and hoping to be forgiven by competence in small tasks. She dreamt she was walking in a field of glass that was also a sea, and the dragons were fish beneath it, and when they breached they did not burn her but painted her with the water that slid off their scales. She woke with the taste of that water in her mouth and could not decide whether it had been sweet or bitter. The next day did not improve because days do not care about the narratives of queens. The ravens had indeed brought messages tied with strings in bad knots, and some were as heavy as lead and some as light as men's boasts. Tyrion spoke to her about ships and men, and she nodded at the parts of it a queen should nod at and stopped him when he reached the part where he wished to put soft fabric over a hard truth and call it upholstery. Varys told her a thing about a thing, and she told him to tell her more when he had more than a shape and an opinion. Yora said that the sword he had been given was heavy, but the hand that had given it had been heavier, and he carried both without complaint. Grey Worm trained men who believed in something. Missandei corrected a steward who had forgotten how to see people who did not wish to be turned into furniture. Jon Snow came to the yard as if his life had always had yards, and he had always taken news with his face and decided in silence. The dragons were not at the north door. They were lean lines of shadow on the ridge, and when they came as if they had remembered a place that was as much theirs as any place could be. They ignored everyone they had always ignored. They noted everyone they had always noted. They found Jon Snow like a needle finds the magnet that was not supposed to be in the hay. They did not crowd him. They noted him and returned to their interests the way a man tastes the air and goes on chopping wood. Daenerys let herself breathe. Calm is not acceptance. It is a muscle. She worked it. When noon tipped into afternoon and the cook sent out trays to the north door because he had been told to perform a farce until the farce taught the audience something, the dragons did exactly as they had been warned they would do. Viserion used one paw to upend a tray and chased a roast hen through 3 courtyards while it spun like a wounded comet. Rhaegal sniffed a loaf and sighed and turned his head and hissed at the insult of it. Drogon placed his snout on the flagstones and ignored all food as if the gifts of men were an offense to a body that had learned to take what it wanted from a higher shelf. The servants learned new but careful laughter, the kind that lets breath out and does not cost anyone blood. Toward evening, a wind came out of the east and carried a smell that men in the yard did not know and stopped smelling because the gods are kind and dull a nose against some kinds of fear. Jon Snow knew it and did not know that he knew it until the hair on his forearms lifted. He stood. He looked toward the line where the sea and the sky were arguing again. He saw nothing because men's eyes look where they want to see. The dragons lifted their heads and their throats rumbled with the warning they give to thunderstorms and strangers. "What is it?" Davos said quietly because quiet is sometimes a way to be louder. "Ice," Jon said, and the word did not belong to the sea. It belonged to the memory of boots on a black lake that had learned how to bear weight and had changed its mind. It belonged to breath that never warmed, even when it passed into a body, or the idea of it. He looked at Daenerys as if asking permission to use her island to face the thing that had followed him so long it had forgotten how to travel without him. She did not speak. She nodded. The nod was not concession. It was alliance. It was also grief because there are ways a woman loses her children that have nothing to do with death. Night came thin and then thick. The stars were holes poked with an impatient finger through a black cloth. The dragons flew. They were black on black, and then light caught the edges of them and made them into knives. Jon did not ask to ride. The thought had been in the back of his throat all day, and he had held it there like a man holds back words that would be taken for vanity. Rhaegal chose for him. The green one came to him without pomp, and the forward set of the forelegs said what it had to say. Daenerys watched and did not step between them. She did not bless. That she remained was its own kind of blessing. They rose. The sound found the old stone and made it sing. Daenerys felt the song in her teeth. She put her knuckles against her lips and tasted iron. Tyrion said something polite about scouts and information, and she nodded him into silence because this was not a matter for men who had learned to ride horses by paying other men to break them first. The moonlight drew a line across the sea. The dragon and the man went along it. The island shrank and the world grew. The north sent south the smell of its stern breath. Below them, unseen, things moved in water that were not the business of men. Above them, seen, the stars moved as they always had, which is to say, not at all to the eyes of mortals. On the wall, in her chamber, at the door with its trays and its resigned servants, on the parapet, in the caverns, in the yard, people who had given themselves to a cause did what people do when causes go quiet between battles. They told small jokes. They counted rations. They lay on pallets and stared at beams and counted backwards from numbers that have no magic except to make a mind busy. They sharpened things that were already sharp because the act of sharpening is comforting. They watched their queen. Some loved her. Some merely needed her. Some did not know the difference. Daenerys stood on the parapet and lowered her hands and raised them and lowered them again and mastered a grief that did not want to be mastered. She thought of a boy she had never met with a sword too big for him, who had told the truth too many times for his own good. She thought of a girl she had never met who had learned to listen so well that she could put a knife where a heartbeat would be when it was still and would be again. She thought of a father her brother had told her stories about until the stories had grown additional rooms. She knew none of it mattered and all of it did. She thought of dragons. She thought of herself as anything but mother and found, to her surprise and her horror, that there was a shape she could put her body into that fit. When the dragon returned, he returned low and quiet, and the wind his wings brought with him smelled of things that had no name in the language of islands. John's face was set in the tight lines of a man who has tried to listen to a thing that does not speak. He slid to the ground and stood. His eyes found her and implied nothing he did not intend. He walked toward her with the pace of a soldier who is not sure whether he brings good news. "Nothing," he said. "Nothing yet. But it's not the nothing of a world that's fine. It's the nothing that happens before the thing." She nodded. "We will find it. We will be found by it. Either way, we will be ready." Regal lowered his head enough that Jon could rest his hand against him without reaching. Drogon kept watch on a horizon that had become a promise. Viserion, bored and uneasy, cracked a stone with his claws to amuse himself. The island kept its secrets and the sea kept its counsel. The moon went about its business. Daenerys went about hers. She looked at the man the dragons had made a note of, looked at the creatures who had taught her to be more than a body that other people could name, and found in herself a place where pride and practicality could say the same thing. "Tomorrow," she said, "we begin a different day." She let the words go out into the cold where they became small, and then, because she was the kind of woman who could, made them large by choosing to keep them. She turned, and the wind turned with her, and the sound of mighty lungs above her made the old stones sing again, like a chord held and released, as if the island itself were breathing along with them.